15 years ago, I had a near-death experience where I actually died, and I was dead for about an hour. And I had to be resuscitated by the ambulance, and they worked on me for 47 minutes. And in that time, I was in another place talking to other people. So February the 15th, 2009, I had been to, February the 14th actually, 2009, I had been to a wedding. My cousin was marrying her fiance. So I went to the wedding and I was feeling fine. I had a great time. I came home with my husband and we got ready for bed. It was quite late and we got into bed and I was feeling a bit odd, but there was no physical symptoms. It was more of an emotional, spiritual kind of odd feeling. Anyway, I lay down and I went to sleep. And then the next thing I knew, I realized I was awake, but my eyes were closed and I could feel myself swaying back and forth, and I was standing up. And I thought, what am I doing standing up? Why am I out of bed? So I opened my eyes and I could see that I was in my bedroom. I could see that it was dark and we had an illuminated clock in there, and I looked at the time and saw that it was, I think it was 3:12 in the morning. And I looked down and I saw that there was a body lying in my bed where I normally lie, and this body was lying on its back and their eyes were partly open. And I watched this body for some period of time, a minute or two, and then I realized that it was me, that I was looking at myself lying in my own bed. And I thought, that's really odd. This doesn't feel like astral traveling. I've astral traveled in the past and I know what that feels like, and it's never as clear as this. It's more foggy, I guess. And this was very clear, like I was face to face, which I actually was. So I thought, what am I going to do? Am I dead? I don't think so. I don't feel dead. So I tried to lie back into my body. I just sort of sat on the bed and then fell over onto my body. And the next thing I knew, I was up and standing next to the bed again. So I tried that one or two more times and the same thing happened. And I realized that I could not get back into my body. My body was blocked from me. And I thought, what am I going to do? I don't know that I want to be dead. And my husband was lying in bed on his side, happily asleep. And I thought, I better wake him up. So I went around to his side of the bed and I tried to shake him and I couldn't. I couldn't touch him. I couldn't move him. So I started to yell. And I'm standing there in this darkened room yelling out, Bernie, wake up. I'm dead. Help me. Can't you see? And he didn't respond at all. He just kept sleeping. And I think I tried shaking him and yelling at him for about 10 minutes before I finally accepted the fact that he just was not going to wake up. And I decided, oh, gosh, I guess that's it. I'm dead. Then I thought, where is the person coming to gather me? Where are like the lights? Why am I in this room? And I became actually very concerned that I was going to become a ghost, and I didn't want to do that. And then I saw these sparkles coming down through the air. And I could see, like, through these sparkles that there was another space opening up. And I thought, oh, I'm not going through there. I don't want to go through there. I was aware that that would take me to what we call heaven and that I would then be dead. And then suddenly my husband actually sat up. And I thought, oh, he's awake. He's heard me. And he got up and he walked around and went into our ensuite to go to the toilet. And I thought, oh, that's it. I'm stuffed. And then a few minutes later, he came back in, hopped into bed, and then he sat up and kissed me on the cheek and then sat back and said, Carmel, what have you done? And he turned on the light and he could see that I was blue and silent, like I was obviously dead. So my husband at that stage was an ambulance paramedic. So he began to do CPR on me. And when I didn't respond almost immediately, he got up from the bed and he ran down the hallway to one of our children's rooms and said, quick, ring the ambulance, your mother's dead. And I could hear him, and then he came back into the room and continued with CPR. I could hear the sirens coming, and I'm just watching Bernie do CPR. And then I heard the trolley and the gear and the men coming down the hallway into the bedroom. And they came down and they pushed my bed aside and they moved Bernie aside and they grabbed me and put me on the floor. And I thought, all right, I'm safe. And then I stepped into that light thing and I found myself in heaven, the proper place. I could see that it was dark there, so it was nighttime, probably the same time as it was where I am. And there were two people standing there, or human figures, waiting for me. And one of them was very, very tall. And probably I would say he'd have to be well over 8 feet tall. And one of them was a normal size person. And they were standing near an oasis kind of thing. And if people read my book or my biography, they'll know that I've actually died 3 times before this death. And each time I've died, I found myself in the same place. So I wasn't shocked by that. So I walked up to these people, and one of them introduced, as he had done before, himself as Jesus, and the other one introduced himself as Metatron. Basically, it was, hello, Carmel, good to see you again. And I remember I started to cry. I just felt like all this grief came flooding out of me. And I was telling them how sad I was and how hurt I felt by life, that life had been very difficult. And they comforted me and, basically let me cry for a little bit of time. And then they told me that I did not need to go back to Earth and I did not have to continue with my life, that I could stay dead if I wanted to. And I thought about my life on Earth, and it's quite a remarkable thing to be standing in this place that is real, but it's not earthly. It's not part of Earth, but it is as real as Earth. And there's no sense of haste and no sense of pressure. And people, the beings there, whether they're humans or animals or whatever, are all very caring and very loving. And, they told me to think about it and that if I wanted to go back, they would ask something of me. I was there for a very long time in the human sense, because from the moment that the ambulance arrived to when I was revived was 47 minutes, I think, memory. And that was 47 minutes of CPR and shocks and adrenaline shots. And all the time I'm standing in heaven, or sitting down at that stage actually, and talking to these people. And I was asking them questions, I suppose were maybe nonsensical, but I was looking for hope for the world, for the future. I asked them if Star Trek, for instance, if you have ever seen Star Trek, it's a very old and popular series. I asked them if Star Trek was real, and they told me that it was in the future, obviously not as exactly as portrayed. And I asked them things like, was religion necessary as in the church? And they said no, it wasn't. And as long as you had a belief in a power, in something greater than you, it was fine. And that the purpose on life basically is to learn how to be kind, is to learn how to love, is to learn how to be open. I think we all think we know how to love, but it's actually a very difficult thing to know how to genuinely love. I waited in heaven, just talking to these people, and I was aware that my guides who work with me when I'm consulting, Peter and Hiram, were also there. So I spent a bit of time talking to them. Mostly what we talked about was things to do with me and how I'd been coping, because there have been times in my life when I'd been very angry or very disappointed, or had, at various times been not the greatest to other people myself when I was younger. And the older I get, the more I realise the truth that kindness and love is what it's all about. And eventually Jesus said to me, if you want to go back, Carmel, you need to go now, or it will be too late. So I said goodbye to them, and I stepped through back into my bedroom, where I could see that the ambulance paramedics were still working on my body, trying to revive me. And they were just about to call it. I saw one look at another one. He said, can't remember the word, he said, how many cycles, I think, is that? And he said, the other one said, we've gone through everything. And they looked at each other, and I knew that they would stop now. And so I got ready to lie back into my body. And before I did, I stopped and I looked closely at all the faces of the people that were working on me, because I wanted to be able to remember them if I got my functioning back. And then I laid down into my body, and the last thing I remember before I just felt like I was burning was one of the ambulance officers said, "We've got a pulse." And I knew that I'd made it back, that I was alive. So it was 47 minutes of them trying to revive me and just about to give up before I got a pulse. And that is the last thing that I remember about my human life until I actually was brought out of the coma that I was in several days later. I would hate to call it a magical place, because, you don't want to encourage people to go there before they are meant to go there. But it certainly was a place where you felt you could find comfort and answers and beings who understood you. you know, in the end, as I said, I was given a choice whether to come back or to stay in heaven. When I first came back, I thought that I had convinced them to send me back. Like, I was in a coma, you know, a drug-induced coma in hospital, and I managed to drag myself out of the coma state when my husband was visiting me long enough to say to him, I came back for you. And then I went back into the coma, which was quite extraordinary, you know, that I did that and was able to do that. And now, though, 15 years later, I think that in heaven, they were quite determined for me to come back and to continue with my work, but it had to be my choice. So they sort of like hedged me along the right way.